So this is tape. Hello, I'm Doc Hamels, and I'm the host of Chautauqua Sunrise. But today I'm going to be your host for today's show called Chautauqua Candidates. This is a series of 6 interviews which will be aired during the week of October 3 through 9. Our producer, Chris Burt, invited all candidates for the following offices: District Attorney, County Executive, New York State Assembly 150th District, New York State Senate 57th District, and U.S. Congress 23rd District. Not all candidates accepted the invitation, so we're going to see the ones that did today and throughout the week. This interview is the second in this series featuring P.J. Wendel, who is running for the office of County Executive here in Chautauqua County. And as I said, this interview will begin on the air throughout the week from October 3 through the 9th. And now I'd like to welcome P.J. Wendel back to the studio. We just saw you not too long ago, didn't we?
Thanks for having me, yes.
Okay. P.J., since we really haven't had an opportunity to interview you in great detail, could you just kind of introduce yourself to our viewers today and tell them whatever you want about yourself and your background?
Well, my name is Paul Wendel. I go by PJ. I've been a 42-year resident of Chautauqua County. I'll be 43 at the end of the month. Moved here as my dad relocated with Cummins Engine several years ago. Graduated from Southwestern Central. Went to school there from second grade through my graduation. Left, went to SUNY Brockport, pursued a degree in physical education. Returned home. This is my love, my passion. I've loved this area. So I came back home. While I was in college, been a member of our Lakewood Fire Department now 32 years, 26 years of those. As an EMT, I've risen through the offices there between line officers, lieutenants, captains, was as high as the assistant chief, president of the fire company, the business end of the organization. Have 2 master's degrees, one in educational leadership, one in exercise science and human performance. So have my schooling in my pocket. Do have my administrative degree as a teacher. Spent 25 years in education, 20 of them at Faulkner Central School. I've been a coach of wrestling and football, wrestling for about 27 years. 13 years ago, I got into government, elected official, and at that time was the village of Lakewood. Became a trustee with then Tony Caprino. Learned a lot from Tony, a great mentor, a great leader in the community and the county. Worked with him. Then after his passing, Dave Wertelman became the mayor, was the deputy mayor for 2 years, and had my sights set on something a little bigger. So I ran for the county legislature. I was successful in 5 terms. Just started my 5th, and this opportunity arose when then County Executive Borrello became Senator Borrello. They were looking for candidates, and I left the teaching profession December 19th of last year and entered into position of county executive. And I've been here since January 2nd. Unique experience, but 8 years as a legislator prepared me for that. 4 of those were in leadership, assistant majority leader, and in 2 years unanimously voted as the chairman of the legislature. So I bring a great deal of experience of county government and a great deal of experience of Chautauqua County to the office. So I'm excited to have this opportunity and really represent the people of Chautauqua County and do the best we can to make life here in Chautauqua County the best it can be.
Thank you. PJ, I was a teacher for a number of years, as you know, and when I moved into administration, that was a big decision. We had to have a long talk at my household. What kind of a decision and I stayed in education, what kind of a discussion did you have in your house when you said, oh, by the way, I'm going to quit teaching and I'm going to go do this other gig?
Well, it wasn't interesting. I'll never forget, it was an evening after a legislative meeting, and I'd had several people ask me if I would consider it, as former legislators, fellow legislators. And the thought crossed my mind, and it had come across at several different times, throughout the last year as then George was transitioning from county executive to senator. A lot of opportunities there, and people had asked me, would you consider it? Wasn't quite sure, and really you're not going to make that move unless you have support from home. And my wife was a big supporter, has been throughout my experience in county government. And and I looked at her, I said, what do you think? And she's like, if you're ready, go ahead. And I said, really, this is a big change. You realize what we're doing is teaching is a very, it's a great career. And unless you make, have some issues, it's a career. Once you're there, you can stay there till your retirement. But getting into administration was something I was, moving down that path. So I knew the challenges and the, I wouldn't say stress, but the change of the job would be there. So obviously, stress changes a little bit as county executive, and now March 15th, when the pandemic hit and we declared a state of emergency, stress was a lot different. But, this is something I had prepared for as far as, setting myself up throughout my career in leadership roles. I take a little bit of everything I've had and brought it to light. But, yeah, a lot of long talk. We're usually in bed 9:30, 10 o'clock. It was about 12:30. We were still sitting in the living room talking. And my wife Jennifer said, if this is something you really want to do, then I support you. And that my daughter was a foreign exchange student in the Czech Republic, and she was surprised. But my son, who's 14 now, is they're also behind me, and they and as I made the transition, the support I had from everybody, fellow legislators, people in county government, people in the community, felt it was the right move, and it was a good move for me. So I'm just going to continue as long as I can.
Okay, thanks. I know we've had those talks at my house. My wife would say, whatever you decide, I support you. And sometimes she thought I was a little crazy, and other times she suggested things that I thought she was a little crazy. But it's a team, isn't it?
It is.
You have to have that. Okay, since you mentioned COVID, there you are, first time county executive appointed by the legislature. You're 2.5 months, I guess I figured it out, into your position. And then this COVID thing hits. So as county executive, what lessons have you learned?
Well, listening. Realistically, listening is probably the biggest one I've learned. Taking experiences from everybody. One of the things that happened, I had met Steve Aquario, our executive director from NYSAC, and learned that there are only 18 county executives statewide. So the 18 of us are in communication quite often. A good colleague of mine is Mark Poloncarz out of Erie County. Many times people compare us to Erie County. We're about 1/10 of Erie County, but he's always been very generous to lend a hand and listen and have some ideas bouncing off. And whether it's Mark Molinaro out in Dutchess County or Steve Newhouse in Orange, a lot of us really communicate quite well. But the point of listening, NYSAC and Steve Aquario set up county leadership meetings every night, 7 o'clock. And it was listening to then what was happening, George Latimer in Westchester County, where they were almost the epicenter when it first happened. And you listen to what worked, what didn't work, mistakes that were made. So you just take notes. And, okay, we're not going to do that. And okay, we're not big enough that might happen, but we'll maybe put it to scale. So really, that's what was happening. And the other piece was, I like to talk. I engage quite often with people, but the most important thing was listening to everybody. Not coming off, making decisions off the cuff, taking time to look at the data. And that's really what has driven our decisions here in the county, is data-driven, the science behind it. And we really take the time to get a lot of opinions. And, I've got 3 physicians. I've got our sheriff, emergency services director, our public health director. They're on my response team, as we call ourselves. And we talk, then was 7 days a week. And all hours of the day, if something popped into our head. So listening to all of those ideas and different concepts. You have Dr. Burke, who's been in public health for 40 years. You've got 2 really great physicians, in Dr. Michael Falk and Dr. Brian Walters, our medical directors for the EMS program here in the county. So we took And my wife is a respiratory therapist. So she has connections with people that were in New York City and listening what was happening on the front lines. What were we doing? What were the trends? What were the norms? So listening to everybody and then making those sound decisions, but keeping in mind, and it has always been, from the very first moment that state of emergency was declared, it was the health and safety of our residents. And that's where we've kept this, that's where we've continued this, and we'll continue until, you know, the flag is lifted, or whatever we want to call it, you know, whatever that may be.
We don't know what it's going to look like yet.
No, but it's really, you know, caution and safety throughout this entire event.
The quick answer to my next question would be nothing. So I'll see how you answer it. What would you do differently now that you've been able to look back? On COVID now I'm talking.
Well, you know, if you look at it and you say, do I stand by my decisions? Yeah. So would I have changed anything? Maybe not. Or probably I wouldn't have. Yeah, I've stuck by my decisions.
Okay.
What would we have done differently? You know, I don't know. I think when you look at everything as a whole, after it's all said and done, and this is the question that just came up today. You know, the state now wants us to plan for our next pandemic. What would we do? We're still in the middle of one. So it's, you know, it's really relative
Wait
to
till we
your
get to
question.
the end, we'll tell you.
Right, exactly. So I think that's what's going to happen is we, you know, looking at the end of this and said, okay, well, we made a decision in March. Would we have made the same decision in June? That's the question we have. Sometimes I would probably say, I wouldn't have. I made it in March. I don't know if I would have made that in June. Or I made it in March, but I didn't have the information I had in June. And there were a lot of things that changed, whether it's treatments. When this started, you know, everybody had showed pictures right across the state. Nobody was wearing masks. You know, I remember I talked to my daughter in the Czech Republic. She's like, Dad, you have to wear a mask when you leave the house. So we talked about it with our group. I said, you know what? Let's do it. Tell her we'll wear a mask. Let's push that. Well, the next day the governor came out and said, we're all going to wear masks. So, you know, it's not getting credit. But making that decision, the team agreed to it. And then within 24 hours, the governor saying, this is what we're going to do, it just validated our decision. So those types of things happen. And the decisions we made have been validated throughout this pandemic. There was one thing that I did a little bit earlier, and you know that's when this first happened. We shut down the restaurants, and I made a comment that maybe the governor reacted too quickly. Going back, maybe would have just held that comment and just realized what was happening. The comment was made in the sense that the decision was made on Thursday. Be prepared another day or two. You're closing. That was hard because, you had some of these restaurants make orders on Monday or Wednesday, so they just received their orders of fresh food. And so how do we deal with that? But, I think as looked at it, that may have been the only thing that I would have done differently is just sat back and waited to see how that first initial statement came out. But other than that, I think I'm very confident that the decisions we made have been the right decisions. Okay. Not everybody agrees. That's the first thing we learned.
That's part of the job, right?
Not everybody agrees with the decisions, but they were made for the health and safety of our residents, and we're going to continue to do that.
Well, as you know, I do live TV every week, and things fall out of my mouth that I wish I could have pulled back every once in a while. And usually it's mispronouncing of something, right? It happens. Okay, so when you were on TV with me last week, you said something, and I made a little note of this in my mind that I was going to ask you. So get ready. This is going to be a fun question. Okay, fun question. You said you're a movie buff, and you're always quoting movies.
All the time.
Okay, so my question is, what movie character are you?
Wow, man, that's a good one. I don't know. I think just like what I bring to the table as county executive, a little bit of everything.
Okay.
Maybe the action hero. At the same time, intellect sits back. I love history. I love learning from history. One of the things I've talked about in my office, it's a very modern office. I want to bring back some of the old posters, some of the old maps of the county. I have a soft side. I listen, and in this job, you need to listen to people, and there are a lot of people going through a lot of difficult times. So I don't know if there's any one character. If I were to look at an actor, I really, really admire Robin Williams before he passed, because he could be serious and funny and tough and soft, and I think one of his best works was Good Will Hunting. I played a really amazing character, and I think of bringing all that, and I think a lot of times, that's what I like to do for people, is bringing my experience and sitting down with people and getting them to talk and open up and getting to the core of the problem. People call my office and are upset, and a lot of times what they're upset about isn't necessarily what they called about. So you take the time to listen. And I think, so I don't know if there's going to be any one person, one actor, figure, or one character I'd be, but I think it's a little bit of everybody.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. I was thinking Van Diesel, but
similarities in
you
the
sort of have
hairstyle.
that Van Diesel
hairstyle.
logo. Okay. So I think you've sort of answered this question, but I'm going to ask it a little differently. You didn't campaign to be county executive, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what makes you qualified to be a county executive? You got your credentials as a teacher, you're a wrestling coach, you're an EMT, but to be the county executive, what do you have to be? What do you have to do to be a county executive? Now you can kind of answer that question because you've been in the job a little bit. So what makes it different than some of these others?
Well, you really have to be well-rounded. You really have to know a little bit about everything and a lot about everything at the same time. When you prepare for meetings and when you go in, you need to make sure you're prepared. You do your homework. You reach out to business or manufacturers. You take time to get to know your subject matter. I think that's really important, and the experience of understanding county government as a whole coming into this. If you were come in and say, okay, you've got to prepare a budget by September. Well, how do I do that? Well, again, it would be daunting, and when I first came in, I said, okay, when do we get started? They're like, just wait. That's July and August.
You were ready to go.
I was ready to go because I understood when the legislature took over the process, but I wasn't sure about the county executive and how long because, I don't, and like anybody else, didn't want to procrastinate and we're 2 weeks out, where's my budget? And then the other thing too is, as a teacher, as you know, your classroom is your domain. If you don't do it, it doesn't get done. Mm-hmm. Whereas in county government, you have to take time and rely on your leadership around you. And I think that's what's really important. And it's having the faith and trust in those that are here, that are doing the right thing, that they have my vision, that they're doing things the way I'd like them done, but they're doing things in the way our team as a cabinet is moving the county forward. And I think that's important. We may not always agree on decisions across the board, whether it's my department heads or myself, but at the end of the day, we have to understand why the decisions were made. And I think that's important. So what really makes me unique is one, my experience, whether it's with the fire service, whether it's with manufacturers, whether it's with business owners, being in education, understanding the teachers, the public sector, the private sector. I think a lot of those things, if you look at past executives, each one of them has a flair. Each one of them has a niche, but I think the difference between myself and others is I have so many of those connections, so many of those niches, so many different tools in my toolbox that I bring to the table that it helps me and it makes me what I feel is the best qualified candidate for this position.
It sounded to me that you knew the questions, you just didn't have the answers yet. Mm-hmm. Was that a fair enough statement?
Yeah. I mean,
from being a legislator.
Certainly, yes. You do know a lot, and we're involved a lot. As the chairman, I worked very closely with George as county executive mm-hmm. and understood a lot. And even as majority leader working with Vince or assistant majority leader at the time, is opening up that dialogue. And I've always been one that I wanted to be connected with what's going on. And I really want to know. So as my constituents come out and ask me questions, I want to be able to give them a solid answer, not, let me take a minute, let me get back to you on that one. I think it's important to be able to have the answer and be able to answer them as honestly as you can. And that's really important. And again, a lot of those experiences I've had coming into this office. So it's helped out.
Since you have the luxury of having a few months or several months under your belt, having been on the legislature, having been a county resident for many years, what are three things that you think are your top three issues that you want to tackle in the coming years?
Well, one is our economy. One is business, bringing businesses back to Chautauqua County, making sure we have a tax base that is supported by our residents. The next one is Chautauqua Lake and our lakes in general. We have Finley Lake, Cassadaga Lake. And we also talk about our waterways. So our lakes and waterways are very important. Making sure that we don't have pollutants going in, making sure we're concerned about stream bank stabilization and sedimentation coming into Chautauqua Lake, making sure that we're working with our federal partners and state partners on Lake Erie and multi-state agencies. I did reach out to Kathy Dahlkemper, the county executive of Erie County, Pennsylvania, mm-hmm. and they have a marine sanctuary that they're looking to do because there's a lot of shipwrecks in Lake Erie. over 127. Actually, my son today works on a dive boat.
Wow.
But she is looking to create this marine sanctuary, and people think we're saving the fish. We can't fish. We can't. Well, it's really it's saving the diving area. So reaching out with other states to get that waterway system established and making sure we have clean waterways. Not only in our largest in Lake Erie, but also in Chautauqua, and our smallest between Cassadaga and Finley Lake as well. Making sure we have that stable economy. And the next one is our taxes. We want to make sure that county government is run as efficiently and effectively as possible. Until we bring our residents back, we have some would say dwindling population, but we need to make sure that population is represented well enough, make sure we have good working relationships, and I think it's really indicative, too, of my experience in the legislature is working across the aisle. What I love to hear from people is when they meet me, they don't know what political party I'm with, which is a tribute to how I work. I don't focus on my party's agenda or my own personal agenda. I work on what's the best for everybody. So I believe, the first one is our businesses and our economy, our lakes, and lastly is our tax base and our county government, making sure it's efficient.
I have a question for you about the budget. I see that you had a slight decrease. Is that true?
Yes, it is.
All right, so answer me this question, please. How is it possible that the whole world got dinged by COVID, they're screaming they have no money, and you are proposing a budget that's less than before? How does that work?
Well, we asked ourselves the same question, but the answer was this. As I formed my COVID response team, Kitty Crow, our finance director, and Kathleen Dennison, our budget director, came to me and said, finances are hurting. We need to take a look at this. And I didn't waste any time. We formed a team, myself, Chuck Nazaro, our minority leader and has a vast experience in the business
Legislator.
world. Legislator, yes. CFO from UPMC Chautauqua before he retired. Pierre Chagnon, again, another vast business experience, who's now the chairman, and Jay Gould, who's been on audit and control.
Both sides of the aisle.
Exactly. And we got everybody together. We had our legal team. We had, that time, Jessica was Neske, our HR director. Now it's Gene Riley, who replaced Jess. So my COVID finance team met, and we made some very tough decisions. We had to amend our budget to the tune of $4 million reduction in our adopted budget. So now we made that amendment. Then we put out our furlough, which I'm sure scared, and even as we thought about it, people are talking, again, listening to other counties, and throughout this process, Kitty, our finance director, is listening to other treasurers, Kathleen's listening to other budget directors. So we're getting the vibe across the state, what's happening. And everyone said, well, they're looking at layoffs, they're looking at this. And I said, well, I don't want to lay anybody off. A furlough, we can keep them on the books, they get their insurance, they're not getting paid for, they're not working, getting paid. That was something that was understandable. And we made sure that was safe because of what was happening with the unemployment and the $600 bonus. So as we planned that, we knew that there was safety, there was a structure in place, and that would end July 31st. So we offered the furlough. 150 individuals took it. So it was great for those who took it, but even more so great for those who stuck around and picked up the extra work for those who furloughed. But the combination of all that reduced our budget $5.1 million. We would not be able to offer anything had we not had that furlough, had we not had that budget amendment. We'd be looking at a completely different picture right now because we'd be potentially having to use more fund balance, and realistically, that's something that we want to plan for. They call it the rainy day fund. But if something were to happen in the budget and we don't monitor things closely, we use the fund balance here, then we don't have fund balance later. So it's a balancing game. But at the end of the day, when Kathleen talked to me about how we looked at the budget, uniquely, we override the tax cap. Last year's cap of what we could have taxed was $2.2 million. This year, it was only 1.3. So we had our work cut out for us. And even with that reduction of 5 cents, we're still 12 cents over the tax cap.
So if I got this right, early on you realized you needed to do something. You cut your costs to create a savings account, which is benefiting this year coming up.
Yeah. Well, it's benefiting now, and as we've done that, and then what we did is we saw we can live within our means. We saw how things were projected starting 2020. Sales tax revenue was ahead of our projections early on, so we felt confident keeping the same numbers coming into 2021 would help us. So yeah, we looked at a lot of things, and we looked at things differently. And as we talked we thought outside. We budgeted outside the box. We'd say, think outside the box. This time we budgeted outside the box, and in those changes and concessions that were made, and people gave things up. You know, there are things that we gave up, but the bottom line was making sure we didn't lose our services and we didn't lose our workers as well.
Okay,
So,
fair enough. You talked about bringing businesses back. I've interviewed so many county executive candidates over the years, skilled trades, all this stuff. What are you going to do different?
well, I think
Why haven't we got there?
well, I think one of the things is how we market. You know, we've started to reach out now, the internet and opportunities. And I think what's really important is if you look at our IDA, you know, it was questioned that our IDA is one of the worst performing IDAs in New York State. To the contrary, they're looking at a unique figure. It's a unique formula. What we have to look at is the number of jobs retained, the number of jobs that have stayed here and didn't leave Chautauqua County. Now what we've done is we've taken that group, and because of their efforts, they just got a $10.5 million grant from the federal government.
Yeah.
The federal government's not, as you know, they don't like to throw money around, and they're not going to give it out unless they know it's going to a useful source and people that are going to use it respectfully and responsibly. That's where our IDA is. So I believe right now what we're doing is we're looking to market IDA. We're looking to get out there. We have properties now. We have one of the top-notch real estate agencies in the country that brokers in available properties for development. We're in touch with them. We're reaching out. As you know, we have a property opportunities here in the county. We've reached out in wake of the Amazon challenge or change up in Grand Island. So knowing that somebody like Amazon is considering Chautauqua County is starting to open the doors to other businesses to say, hey, what do they have up there? What makes them unique? And when you look at things, and we market places like Cummins Engine, who is one of the most profitable factories in the Cummins family, that's what people look at. We have a great workforce. We have skilled workforce. And right now, we have a lot of jobs opportunities for people, so we need to capitalize on that. We need to make sure our workforce is ready. But I think using every opportunity and connections we have in business, there's a lot of great businessmen here in Chautauqua County. There's a lot that visit Chautauqua County. Tapping into them, reaching out to them, and affording opportunities and exploring every avenue. Don't overlook anything out there for, we can't get that. Let me tell you. I stepped foot on the mat one time against Kurt Angle, who was the returning national champion. I could have laid over, I could have rolled and let him pin me. Instead, I fought. So I think when you step up to bat with anybody, that's the type of person I am. If Amazon wants to come in and talk, we'll sit down and talk. Awesome. If any big business, we're going to do it.
On. I promise you have the last minute. So folks, PJ Wendel is a candidate for county executive here in Chautauqua County. You got the last minute.
I think one of the things that's very interesting is my experience I bring to county government. 8 years in the county legislature, 4 years in leadership of the legislature. Since I've been here in Chautauqua County and now as the county executive, I've been thrust into a situation that was very unique. A worldwide pandemic, the likes that hasn't happened in 100 years. And when we look at the decisions that were made, the leadership that I've provided, and the vision I've given this county, we are going to continue this for the next year and for several years to come. My opportunity is to take everything I have, all my experiences, my connections, and sitting down with everybody and making the most of Chautauqua County. A 42-year resident, I can tell you I understand and have a feeling for what's happening here in Chautauqua County. I chose to return when I came back from college. This is my home. This is my passion. And I bring that experience for your next county executive.
Wow, you timed that just perfect. PJ, thanks for joining me today. Folks, you can watch this show throughout the week at 12:30 and 6:30 p.m. during the week of October 3 through 9. Every day. You're going to be on twice a day.
All right.
So you can check it out, and if you want to have your friends look at it, you can give them that information right here on Access Chautauqua. PJ, take care. Best of wishes and good luck to you. Folks, I'm Doc Hamels, and thanks for watching Chautauqua Candidates. Bye now.